Well, here's an interesting fact, right? The world of B2C, they have C-suite roles called chief customer officer, chief experience officer, like somebody who's responsible for taking all those conversations, all those different lenses, and running their own conversations on top of that and coming up with what we all know is really important. There is one voice of authority in our business, right? And it's the voice of the customer. But if we ask it from the unique point of view, so like a sales team, they're having conversations every day, to your point of view, with prospects that turn into customers. But it is through the lens of a sales conversation. There's actually a shield that's up in between, right? I'm being sold to, and I know it. I'm not going to sit back. It's why most CMOs, when they take on a new role, they just start calling customers, right? And the first thing we say is, this is a non-sales conversation. I'm just here to learn, right? And we ask things like, what is it that we do for you? Like really interesting questions that seem very generic, right? But you would never design a voice of the market program to run through a department that was set up to do something very different as their number one objective. Even customer success, their number one goal, cross-sell and upsell. 73% of new B2B revenue, new annual revenue, according to Forrester, comes from existing customers, right? So a sales objective, a product development objective. And by the way, we have a roadmap we want to show you, right? So I guess here's my question is, if we need to have marketing, and by the way, McKinsey, Gartner, Forrester, everybody has said and come out and said that the CMO should play the role of the chief customer officer in a B2B organization. That's my first question then. If we're all kind of in agreement that we need a voice of the customer that unites all these lenses, and that is the source to train our AI, right, on not just generic data that everybody has, but our unique go-to-market strategy combined with their unique needs, how do we go about doing that? And I'll tell you why we're not doing it. Because McKinsey came out and said only 15% of companies actually execute on a voice of customer program. And I've had many CROs tell me and CMOs tell me, oh, I think that's too high, Steve. So that's the big question. How do we do this?
Yeah, well, it's challenging for many reasons. And one, I do think a lot of B2B companies do have a chief customer officer, but it's typically the person who owns customer success, support, and their role is to make the customers happy. And like they should know the voice of their customers in that perspective. And to me, I think it's not about changing somebody's role. Like I think everyone should be talking to the customer, but I think instead of saying, well, I had a conversation with the customer and making that the voice, I do think this is where marketing needs to be sort of that overlaying, more strategic of here's what they're saying to our product team. Here's what they're saying to our customer team. Here's what they're saying to our execs. But then we also need to ask the questions that no one wants to know. And it's not just what are we doing for you? What are we not doing for you? What are you still worried about? What is, when you go talk to your boss, like what are the three things that are always on the table? And they might have absolutely nothing to do with our product, our platform, anything, but like, what are you really worried about? Because everyone typically says, when you sell to a customer, they're worried about one of two things. Like, are they going to save money? Are they going to make money? And it's like, well, maybe, but also maybe they're worried about something else. And I also think one of the voices of the customer program, if you will, that people tend to forget is the customer that you lost, that churned. Honestly, why did you leave? Not, and it's always like, oh, something with the pride, but it's like, let the dust settle, let them get away, have a conversation with them, have a conversation with prospects that you lost and actually ask them, why'd you go with someone else? And sometimes it's sort of that intangible, oh, well, it just seemed like they were more interested in me. Or, I tried to, maybe they were a customer and they left because they wanted help. They were dismissed because you didn't think it was a big deal, but it actually was a really big deal to me. And likewise, then you start finding these threads where then you go start to talk to the customers about, well, why do you stick with us? Not product related. And a lot of times where you really get the differentiation, at least for us, you'll start hearing well, when I work with so and so on the CS team, it's like she's part of my team and she understands. And like it's these intangible things, but that's what makes everybody stand out because at the end of the day, especially with AI, you can put out a new feature, somebody else is going to come out with it too. And so I think to me, I feel like it's every department should be talking to the customer, but you have to sort of have that layer on top of it. But also, the customer has to be more broad of its current customers, its past customers, its unhappy customers, its customers who didn't even come to you to get that view. I think this is where analysts, they're not necessarily customers, but I always love, if you ever talk to Gartner, my first question is, what do you hate about us? What do you hear? Like, call my baby ugly, please. And because if even not asking the question, they still have the opinion. So tell me, because as a marketer, the only way I know how to change your opinion is to know what your opinion is in the first place, right?